on task.
Yeah.
You could tell you were in education. You hit that one right on the head.
You know, basically, what you're saying is it's a very simple solution. Like you put the phone
Often they
over there.
are.
Why don't we do it when you go out for dinner? Leave the damn telephone at home in case of an emergency. I can understand this.
Right.
Okay. But just to find out who called me, I don't care who called me. I'm not home. You know.
That's why I don't even open Facebook.
Those
I'm
are
on it, but I don't even open it.
I don't.
And those are individual choices. So when I get home, I have a busy job.
Yeah, I know.
That consumes time outside of the time I'm in the building.
Yeah.
And my wife's a teacher. She's in education, so she could too. When we get home, the phones are downstairs.
Good.
And we spend time with each other, and we spend time with our kids.
Yeah.
It's making that conscious choice, because I have late nights, so I'm connected a lot of times if people need to get in touch with me for any kind of emergency or anything. We blocked apart family time, family nights, where we cleared our schedules for certain nights of the week, and that's family time, and we hold it sacred. So what we need people to do is, if they want to go out to eat dinner, they have to recognize, or family dinner, sit down. They have to recognize that time is sacred. That's important time, and it basically comes down to individual choice and prioritizing.
Dr. Jones, what you're saying is 100% correct. Are you teaching the kids the same thing?
We do talk
In
to
your
kids
class?
about the same thing. As we go, it's funny because I'm around the building a lot during the day. That's where I like to be. I don't like to be in my office. And when I see kids with a phone or something like that, I try to engage them personally. And I do talk about that. I write to people about that. And the lost art of communicating. And our teachers are doing that as well in the classroom, where they talk to them and they want kids to talk. There are a lot of important things. There's eye contact, there's being able to get your point across, there's body language, there's where when you, and the kids get up in front of the class to present, which used to be a class you had to take, they're uncomfortable.
Yeah,
They're
because they don't have the thing in hand.
But boy, can they write when they're anonymous.
Yeah.
You know, so they get uncomfortable because they can't talk person to person. They're so geared into typing and all that.
That's what I was hoping Channel 15 would help with communication. That's why our station here tried to encourage Station 17 to do more with that channel, because then maybe they would learn how to communicate, because they'd listen to themselves, they'd see themselves, oh, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do it better, and they'd relax and assume that. So
I used to teach a speaking class when I was in the classroom, and I did it in stages until the kids were all right with it, because the first thing I would teach them is, when they get up to speak to somebody, make it your own space. They're so used to they're so used to their phone being their own space.
I know.
That you move papers, you move a microphone, even if it's in the perfect spot, so it's your space. And then I would have them do it with a smaller lectern, because then less of them is covered up in front of them. Perfect, I didn't usually have a clear plastic one, but that's the perfect one. And then you take the lectern away, because that piece in front of them gives them comfort.
Yeah.
It's like a security blanket. So the less they have in front of them, the less they feel protected from the audience. Well, now we have this epidemic with students on their phones, and behind their phones, behind their computer screens, they're completely protected behind a blanket of anonymity. So when they go to talk to somebody, they're lacking that.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that. I'm seeing a change for the better at the high school,
I'm glad
where
to
kids
hear
can
that.
engage, kids can talk, even just in my talks with them in the hallways and things like
They
that.
talk to each other.
They talk to each other. Yeah.
Actually, without the machine back and forth.
We still do have the problem where you can look in the lunchroom, and
Yeah.
there's kids sitting at a table and they're texting their friends 2 tables over. So we still have that issue instead of
You
getting
know,
up and talking to them. But
Those are the issues which I know is very difficult to do. But for an old timer like me, I don't understand it. Why do you have to have this stupid thing in front of you? Can't you talk to the person? You know.
I think what he said, the anonymity
I know it.
is a very safe place to be.
It is.
Nobody knows I'm saying it. I can say whatever I want.
Nobody sees me. I can hide behind the
a
thing.
lot. We know people are self-conscious. You know, people at a town meeting, oh, I couldn't get up to say anything. And they're going to be worse than that. That's why I want to see the civics class come.
well, we have that, and that's going great guns. So
We're having the civic class? Is it going to be?
It's not going to be. It's actually happening. We wrote the curriculum over the past summer and had students sign up for it, and we're running 2 sections of it this year. So.
And I noticed it said that he's going to concentrate on federal, state, and local
And local.
governments.
Yep.
And I just hope that leads to a visit to local governments like a town hall.
I've already talked to him about doing a local government day.
Oh, that would-
and
that
that's-
would be great.
You know, you mentioned reaching out to the community. That's part of reaching out to the community.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't, especially now that we're teaching civics again, why wouldn't we want students involved? I mean, if this last election, no matter who you voted for, who you supported or anything like that, if it taught us anything, the amount of news that went around that people could not vet, they couldn't handle what was true, what was fake, what wasn't, and why.
Too much stuff going on.
They're not engaged enough in the larger issues of what's going on to be able to make educated decisions. And boy, I'll tell you what, you get into trouble in a republic when you're not making educated decisions. So the idea that attachment to the community, you mentioned it with the internships. We want people to get into businesses around the community. You mentioned it with Government Day. We want students to get into the town hall and see local government because that's where it's at.
And that's the only one they really have a personal
Right.
way to go and change.
Right.
By not necessarily just running for office, but understanding who to go to whom to
Who they're paying their
appeal
taxes
to if
to,
they have a
et cetera,
problem.
yeah.
Right.
Or when they need information, they're right in the town with them, and they have the right to go to them. And we have a fairly open government in this town, in the city. In the town hall, we have people there who are waiting for the kids. The ones who had them up to 5 years ago, when we used to do it on a regular basis.
Yep.
And they're saying, when are they coming back? I said, I
Let-
don't know, but
I believe
I'm
don't want
asking.
to. I don't want you to corner me and make a promise on air that I
No.
can't keep.
No, I
But
understand.
we are trying to get that done this spring. We're going to try and get some students over there.
Dr. Rose, how do you get students interested of doing specific, going to town hall, going to Walmart to learn? How do you force them? Do you?
Well,
how-
you know,
How do you get them?
it's interesting. You could force them, but that defeats the purpose of getting
I
them
know,
interested.
but that's
so
one reason I'm
you
asking
find out what they're interested in, which is why we have the career specialist, why we
Right.
have the transition coordinator. You find out what they're interested in, and then you move to make it happen for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's much like I see it with the same way I work with teachers. My job is to not lord over the high school. My job is to get barriers out of the way for the teachers so they can do the good stuff that they do.
Right.
So our job at the high school for students is to not lord over them and force them into things that they have no interest in, because then they're not going to be engaged and it becomes futile. It's to find out what they're interested in and then take the barriers away and make it happen.
Dr. Rose, changing totally for a second.
Sure.
Do you have any problem with drugs in the schools? How do you handle it?
Does the school as a system have problem with drugs?
The whole school, yeah.
Okay. I would say.
high school specific.
If I told you there were no drugs in the school, I'd be lying to you.
I would know that you were lying.
Right. We used to have a larger or more maybe open drug issue. We bring dogs in, things like that, which there's regulations around that didn't really help much. There are also issues with legislation that was recently passed, and I say recently, a few years, that have made it easier and almost given the social personification that it's okay and it's kind of friendly and easy to do. So we do
It's
have
okay what?
to use drugs.
To use drugs.
And that's at a lower level with marijuana. And you get into these arguments, and the students, again, educated consumers, students say, well, people in the 70s used marijuana and smoked pot, and that was fine. And my answer to them always is, your parents' marijuana is not the marijuana that you are smoking today. There's always an additive. You have these new different drugs showing up that are bad and that have really bad effects on students. And students' brains don't stop developing, their frontal lobe especially, until they're 25 years old.
Now, how do you go? I mean, let's assume you go into it and you can smell marijuana all over. I know it is certain legal, and they always have the excuse, the doctor told me I can have it. So how do you go about of stopping it?
Well,
At least in school.
Well,
they can do
through
outside is their
education,
business.
through education. I mean, there's a couple basic things. Tobacco, anything you can't smoke anywhere on school grounds. It doesn't matter if you're 10 or if you're 80. It's illegal.
It's legal or illegal?
Illegal to smoke on school grounds. But now with drugs, it's more about an education process. And now the legislation that just came down with the opioid abuse issue with opioids, which is an out-of-school problem that has crept into school because it starts with painkillers being overprescribed for injuries and things like that. So now we do screenings of 9th graders. It's ESPRIT screenings of 9th graders where they have to take a survey with the nurse or the guidance counselor. And then they do that survey. And if certain things arise, they answer those questions in certain ways, then they talk to one of our counselors about it. But that's all confidential. So that information can't be given to anybody or anything like that. Yeah. So our hands are really tied in dealing with something that is an outside problem coming into school. So besides education, without getting into the nitty-gritty of if we do smell marijuana or something, we search kids. If we search kids and find something, then the police are brought in. Without getting into that, we are diligent about
you
going
follow
after it.
through on
Oh yes, yes. That's the biggest no-no that you can have in
You
school.
know what really scared me, if any of you saw 60 Minutes this Saturday, had on drugs. I mean, it was absolutely incredible what they saw and who did it and who's behind and the whole thing. They talk about millions of pills in a little town, which is like the half the size of maybe of your school thing. And nobody does anything. And now they found out that actually the Senate or government approved of all this, so there is less interference.
The oversubscription.
It is really and truly scary.
The drug issue that we have, the problem that we have, if you look at the heroin overdoses, the heroin epidemic, the opioid epidemic, it is horrifying.
It is.
And these students who are not necessarily educated, I mean, it's a pill, right? So is it aspirin? Is it not? And
Well,
these
let me have one of those pills. I got a headache.
And these companies market to kids.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, and let's be honest,
Yeah.
especially with marijuana, you know, you talk about the cigarette companies, especially with marijuana, they make them into candy.
Yeah.
So they look like gummy bears. So they look like
They
sweet
include
and
them in
sours and stuff like that.
brownies.
Right.
Yeah.
Now brownies have been around forever. You get kids, you're talking middle school age kids.
You're
They
talking
make
about
candy
kindergarten
and market
kids
to them.
who
Right.
can't do
Yeah.
it.
Right. And they package them purposely to look the same. And the issue is, so say you're smoking marijuana, right? You smoke some marijuana, you start to feel the effects almost instantly because it's in your bloodstream. It's just a medical thing. You eat a gummy bear laced with marijuana. You eat it, okay, you don't feel anything. Well, must not be enough. You eat another one, you eat another one, you eat another one. Because you don't feel the effects because your stomach has to break it down before it gets in your blood system. By the time you start to feel the effects, you've already overdosed. And that's scary, and there's nothing you can do about it.
You know, that is what, when you saw that program, it really came home. It really
Right.
got scary.
And the poor infants whose
Born.
parents during
Born.
pregnancy
Right.
were on
Right.
it.
Right.
And I mean, that's heartbreaking.
It is totally, and the thing is, that's why I'm saying, what can we do about
Well,
it?
that's
What can we
why
do?
I was heartbroken that Massachusetts passed it in the first place. And you know who presented it?
Naturally.
It was the businesses that
Of
that
course.
wrote the whole thing.
The businesses, the drugstores, mostly the drug firms,
Yes,
push that all the way
Right.
through.
yes.
You know, unless they really and truly stop it, it's not going to go away.
And I know there's medical reasons for it. I know
That is
that
something
it is,
different.
it can
If-
be a drug that helps pain or whatever.
However,
But that's all
However.
it should be there
there is a
for.
however.
However.
That's the only thing.
And
it
you know,
should be
I
there
mean, you
for.
mentioned that with the schools and how we handle it is, you know, our best tool is education and enforcement. And a lot of the things you bring up or that you've brought up today happen to be societal issues.
Yeah.
You know, as time goes on, some of the changes that we've seen from the time you were in the classroom to the time I was in the classroom to the time that I'm leading the school, schools are becoming more inclusive, and it's becoming more and more on us, and government's putting more and more on us to be almost a health and human services agent.
Exactly.
They expect us to pick up a lot of things that go far beyond education. Now, do these outside factors affect how well a student can be educated? Absolutely.
Yeah, the parents.
But
The
we're
parents
leaving the
are out there.
society piece out.
That's the
Yeah.
other thing. The parents,
Yeah.
in the beginning we were saying, well, the kids are unruly, they don't have any education, that the school system. It's not the school system. The parents are not, we're too busy making money, let's be honest. The husband is working, mother is working, the kids are alone. The key at home alone.